not very happy, not because he was not proud of what I've done. He was very, very proud, but see that esport was a very legitimate thing.
Sometimes casting becomes a feeling of more like a job rather than a passion.
I pushed through all that negativity, and then all of a sudden people started realizing, hold on, I believe in myself.
Yeah, sod them. Like, you just keep on pushing, keep on going forward, be a little linear. Shall we get into it? I think so. So before we kind of get into your story, for anyone who's watching or listening who might not know who you are in a way, or even what you do, would you be able to introduce yourself and tell us kind of why this conversation matters and why people should maybe lean in and listen today?
I mean, tough question to start with, right? I mean, my name's Andreas. I go by Duckling. I started casting when I was 14, and along the way, I've had some ups and downs, you can say. But I have some achievements I'm really proud of. I've obviously worked now quite a few NLC finals. The most recent one stand out in memory, of course, 2025 with Lost Tony's, but also the youngest ever to work with Riot Games in association at EMEA Masters, where I casted that when I was just 18 back in 2022. I've seen a decent bit of Europe through my casting work, and I've had some good, some weird, some awkward, some fun experiences along the way, while also balancing, living a normal life, right? Studying and going through whatever you go through when you're a young teenager going into a young adult.
Most definitely. I want to start at the beginning, though. You said 14, 15, those early days of casting. Now, I have done my homework, right? So I want to start with this photo. And it's like, when you look at this photo, what kind of comes to you? Like, take me back to the moment. Who were you back then? And kind of what were you feeling stepping behind the mic for the first time?
I want to say this was a confident Duckling, right? Because at that point, that was about spring 2015, if I'm not wrong, when I got back, or not 2015, when I was 15, spring 2018, of that would be, what was it, or maybe even 19. It was LCD League Championship Denmark. That's all I remember. At that point, I had cast one Counter-Strike LAN at my local city. And I had actually had a split of Square One under my belt, which has also, been a talent development pipeline for many other casters, like, Initialize, Namara's been through there as well, where I got in when I was 15, and I had some experience casting in English, and I met a few of the guys who did it in Danish, in the Danish league, and I got the opportunity. For me, this was the first time, it was really serious in the sense that I was going into a different city, a different studio, and actually having to work at something that's the best at what we do, right? Because first it was a small LAN, then it was an amateur tournament that was essentially just for fun, not a part of any circuit. But here, this was the best my country had to offer for League of Legends players, which made it a really jarring experience, especially going in so young. That was definitely not the most positive feedback around it. They had before me a caster they were not a big fan of, who was very young as well, who said some, not that they said anything ludicrous, but they just weren't very good and didn't take it very seriously. And that meant that the barrier for acceptance for me was higher. So I remember coming home to this cast. My dad was not very happy, not because he was not proud of what I've done. He was very, very proud. Same for my mom. She was the one who drove me there and drove me back home. But about what people said to me in the chat, right? He did also get endgame spoiled for himself. He was very mad about that. He found out Iron Man died. But about what they said, we laugh at it now, but he was a bit offended at what they would call his son. And that was actually just about a week after I started doing this, a bit of Twitter beef and drama about it, as Gullbo, who now works in the LEC, called out the guys running the league for hiring another 15-year-old after what happened last time, which was actually my first experience with him.
A lot of that is quite introductive, right? I mean, that's the area of esports that some people are a little bit hesitant about going into. People maybe get inflamed in chat for casting, but I wouldn't say starting at 15 is a typical start, right? Many people kind of get in when they were older. So what was that like for you, starting at 15?
It was weird, very weird, right? I was always the youngest, and often by a good margin, and to say I wouldn't say I didn't feel respected. Maybe not by the fans, right? But I was not very good at what I did either. But I'm gonna be honest. I really did not care about what they thought. I cared about how much I loved it, how much I enjoyed it, and the potential I thought I had myself and the work I put into it. I wanted to get better. I was determined to get better, and the guys around me in the studio, they were a bit shocked at first when I came in. Like the Theodore in the picture there was a bit, worried about what it was gonna be like. But after that one cast, he told me we can actually feel you taking this seriously, and like they treated me like one of their own ever since, right? In terms of the fact that they were very open to working with me and had no issue. And I've rarely experienced that, but I guess that's mostly because I don't know about what doors have been closed before I even knew there were a possibility, right? But I always thought that age shouldn't really matter. If I'm good at what I do, I should be able to do it.
Yeah, I almost definitely agree with that. But you said your mum drove you down, right? And your dad was in the chat getting endgame spoiled for him. That's not great. But I've, as I said, done my research, and Astralis. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, Astralis is esports in Denmark, right? If you're someone like me who has a passion for esports and gaming, and you live in Denmark, your grandparents or whoever, if they're kind enough to take interest in what you care about, which I'm lucky my grandparents did. The only thing when I talked about what I did, in terms of casting, they would really ask about was what was Astralis doing? How was it going for Astralis, right? They became the de facto esports that your mom, your grandparents would know about in Denmark. So obviously, I think they're great to follow. I've worked with them for a few small times. One with Guldborg, where we casted their academy team, and obviously they were also outside of Counter-Strike, where they were very nice to cheer for. They had periods in League of Legends, of course, with teams that, especially in the NLC when they were there, were fun to hope that they would succeed and bring the Danish flag high, or raise the Danish flag high.
When we are talking about the Danish flag high in an aspect, right, it's quite nice to see that. I mean, maybe Denmark doesn't have a super strong setup in NLC at the moment, right? I'm not too sure how many players there are compared to the UK, where we have about 3, I think, at the moment, like Kassing and others like that. But having your grandparents know about esports and stuff like that, I mean, did that shape you in a certain way of like you feel more comfortable to reach out at a certain age?
I think it was it's nice reassurance, right? I've never felt weird for what I've done in terms of this. I know, and especially as I got older, and friends got other jobs, and I still just yelled at my PC screen. That I was different, or what I was doing was different, right? But I think the big thing in terms of what Astralis helped do was legitimize esports in my mother's eyes, my dad's eyes, and they could also see that maybe what they were supporting their son in was actually something pretty real. And I mean, I've always had very supportive parents. I think that's a very, very big part of why I've been able to jump out into this thing at that age and be allowed to. I flew to Amsterdam at 16 to cast, right? So that also required some parent permission, because you don't just let any 16-year-old fly wherever they are told someone is waiting for them at the airport to take them to their gig and whatnot. So I think with Astralis legitimizing esport, it very much helped me make an argument, or my parents to see, because I'd never really had an argument with them about it, but see that esport was a very legitimate thing that people could make a livelihood of, and for me, earn a pretty penny as a side job to school.
I mean, that is definitely something. Flying to a different country at 16 years old to cast, that's absolutely insane. But I hope these names kind of mean something to you a little bit. I may mispronounce them a little bit, but Emilius, Quintin, do you remember any of those?
Not the like, can you send the names maybe? Maybe it's the pronunciation.
Yeah. I'll send them over.
Quintin, I remember. I think I recognize that name. But that would
His
be
name.
from Emilius and Quintin. I feel like I know Quintin from the Rust tournament. That's a name that flies with me for C's. But maybe I'm mistaken. I think that's one of the scary things, right? There are so many people you meet in esports that at some point it becomes a pretty big Wikipedia of knowledge. to try and remember. But Emilius, he was also a co-caster for me back in the early days.
Yes.
He casted a League Championship Denmark with me. Quinton, he's a Counter-Strike caster as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I wanted
Finnish
to go
one.
on to that. Metal CS:GO. I'm gonna
Oh my god,
massively pronounce this wrong, but Legion.
yeah, Esport League. That was my
Yes,
Counter-Strike, right?
Esport League.
There was a period where I didn't do much League of Legends, and Counter-Strike became a way for me to support myself. Uh, I don't play much Counter-Strike, but I love watching it. It's a very exciting esport. And yeah, Emilius, the guy I'd worked with from LCD, was the guy who brought me into that as well. So I could make a small shilling, you could say. It's not much, but it was something of it at that age, right? To help support yourself and buy what you need while studying.
Yeah, so I understand you when you were doing stuff like Metal CS:GO and then equally League of Legends, you were casting one other genre as well. Something like 3 genres I remember seeing, if I'm correct.
Yeah. That was the one Rust tournament I had when I was
Mm.
16 with Daedalus, where we went to Amsterdam. And that was a big one for my parents to let me fly abroad. It was a very small scale tournament, but we were down there in person in a little someone's apartment they had set up to be like a studio, because they wanted to make Rust Esports a thing. I don't think it took off, but it was fun, and it was a weird broadcast. Felt very much like cycling because it was like 6 hours of them getting ready and then fighting, and it was very weird but fun experience.
Yeah, so you have all of these different types of genres, and I think that's something that is quite rare, especially when you're coming in at this younger age. So is there this type of memory from your childhood that kind of stands out to you a bit more and really kind of defines who you are today?
Defining me as a person, or defining anyone shortly, is probably a very very difficult thing. I think I was shaped a lot by my boldness when I was younger. The fact that I
Mm,
really didn't care, and I think many of my early casting experiences really shaped that mentality in me. That even if many people don't believe in what I'm doing, if I really believe in what I'm doing and I'm putting in the work, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna pay off. And I remember many of those first streams around LCD with the feedback not being positive, the drama around it, with Gulborg calling it out, and that, right. That was a big thing, and pushing through that, really not caring because I liked what I did. I worked hard to improve, and then I vividly remember one of my first streams with Gulborg in Telia Esports Series Denmark when it got rebranded for a short period, and me and him had worked hard on improving me in the off season, and after the first week things clicked, and I went home and I took a look at Twitch chat, and for once, like, it was the entire Danish community seemed to get behind, like, holy shit, this kid has been here for so long now, and he's moved. I don't want to say moved mountain, but moved, leaps and bounds from where he was. And since that day, I've never had a negative comment about my casting in Danish. Like, it was like, I pushed through all that negativity, and then all of a sudden, people started realizing, hold on, he's actually doing something, which was a very, very pleasing experience.
do you think that had like a positive knock-on effect for your motivation?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like I was being given my big break, right? And the fact that it was not just the people behind the scenes, like Gulborg, putting the faith in me and choosing me as his
Mm.
play-by-play in the Danish league. When I was very young, and there was that stigma around me, right? That I was young and I was very raw, you could say, which was also true. And then to, after that split, be the play-by-play caster in Danish was a very big jump very early, and it just really urged me to push on and try and break into the NLC, right? Because that was the ultimate goal. I wanted to get into the NLC and talk about the region I love, which was a very long journey, but I got there eventually, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Coming from 15 is absolutely nuts. But I understand when you were younger, you were a massive Fnatic fan, right? But you equally had met so many people. Now, there's 2 names that stick out to me of people you met and that I've seen photos of: Medic and Quickshot.
Hmm.
Ooh, what was that like?
Oof, yeah, I mean, Quickshot is someone I would have loved to work with. He, like,
Mm.
would have loved to go up and actually like learn a thing or two from him directly, but sadly, he got out before I got in, you could say. But Medic is someone who I've had a bit more of a chance to work with. We've essentially worked the same event, didn't have any communication with him. Of course, he was casting the bigger games. I was just on for a few group stage games at home, right? For EMEA Masters or EU Masters back then in 2022. But meeting them again, my parents very supportive of my birthday gift. Probably some of the pictures you found with me and Medic in Quickshot was when they drove me down there because it was around my birthday. LEC was played, or in EU LCS back then. Drove me down there so I could celebrate and watch the League of Legends with a few of my mates. I did also meet Medic and I have a bit more of a chat with him around Malmö finals where I was helping out at the event, and we had to organize like meet and greet for him with his fans, and he did actually end up having to swap around with me a few times because someone wanted pictures with me, so that had Medic taking a few pictures of me and some people who wanted pictures with me, which was a very fun experience. But he did also say, but at that point he did also recognize me because I had been on EMEA Masters for the spring split, and we had a good chat. I found out he also supported Leicester, but lovely bloke and incredible caster, right? Like he's just phenomenal.
Yeah, I know you are very set stone on a Leicester fan, but we can touch on that a bit later. But you're now standing here with kind of I'd say a lot of the voices that you heard growing up in a sense, like you're casting with like Trouble, you're reviewing with her in your own time. Now, what is that kind of like for you? Does it feel a bit surreal?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of them I've worked with a long time now, but I think I still pinch myself every now and then to realize that so much of what I grew up watching, I grew up watching when it started really existing. I watched the Nordics. Trouble was in that since 2019. Same for Orcs and Hipbrain, who took a big part in that. Excountrel Orcs, obviously now in Korea, but obviously I had a big period of contact with him for a while around that time with the NLC and everything going on, and he was also incredible. I think I mentioned this to Jake around Copenhagen when I was this hype video in the arena, and obviously he's cast basically every single NLC finals there's been in years. I didn't manage to get one, luckily though. Very happy with that. But I think I told him, he might not realize it, especially because what we do is really silly, right? We just yell at video games, but it can really mean something. And I know as a young kid watching that, it meant something to me watching that league, right? I really enjoyed it. It was so much of my time, and even like he had defined something for me, and it was obviously and I told him that he should be proud of what he did, because even if it isn't maybe the most people in the world, right? But it's not Worlds, it's not LEC or Korea or whatever you want to call it. You've still been a defining voice in that scene for many years now, and he could really be proud of himself, and I think he is, and he was, and I'm very happy with that, because it's surreal working with the people I've watched on the screen for so many years, and to find out they're all as lovely as you hope, right? And supportive and helping you behind the scenes. Trouble a huge part in improving me throughout the 2022 year when I was at the EMEA Masters, spending her own time when she really didn't need to walk reviewing with me, because no one really owes you anything, but somehow just they all really turn out very nice and able to lend that time, which is incredible.
Honestly, like when people VOD review your cast with you, it feels kind of surreal. Like you get a moment of clarity within like, okay, maybe I can do this better. And it kind of feels like ever since you were 15, necessarily, maybe not with the negative feedback, but you're on a quite strong linear line, right? Casting and then shoots up to EMEA Masters a bit crazy. But do you think if you hadn't have met some people in particular, your path would have looked a little different?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to say in real life, right? It probably is very much the same. Networking is a huge part of it, and I really don't like the term networking, because I feel like it often becomes so disingenuous of why you want to talk with people and learn from them, right? Which I think is just a negative stigma around it. But I mean, so many of there are people who I've met who've defined my path, right? The first guy, Jesper Dietles, who I mentioned earlier, the one who brought me into the Danish scene. I wouldn't have had that point of contact with them if it wasn't for him. and he got me in there. Then Gulbo was the one who really, you could say, shot me through the stratosphere or shaped me for that eventual takeoff. And then, I was on the shortlist with a few other casters for 2021 Summer EU Masters with, I think, was it not Hiprain, he was already there. Viperoon, Nymera, me, and one other caster, Dino, I believe. And I didn't get that, but that gave me a point of contact at Riot, right? Who I could then reach out to for 2022 and be like, hey, I was very close to making it last time. How are we looking for this year? And that's what then got me the meeting with the one responsible for talent for for EU Masters in 2022, and eventually got me the spot. So it's all about, I don't want to say utilizing your contacts, but just working really hard. And then some people have the ability to help you out in a way that really boosts you. But I would also say it's about just being bold enough to, you could say, shoot that first message, because if you don't try, you'll never achieve anything, right? You miss every shot you don't take. And I've missed many of shots with many messages I've sent throughout my career, many of whom I can't even remember now because I didn't get a response or I got a no or something. But the ones I remember most, like reaching out to my point of contact at Riot, despite not making EME Masters in summer 2021, was the reason I got it in 2022, because I was bold enough to, try again and shoot my shot one more time. And I think that's a big thing I learned throughout casting, that, and this path, because if you really do not try, and if you just accept it's not going to happen, or don't believe it's going to happen, it won't happen. So you need to keep pushing, and you'll get so many rejections along the way. But now you only think about the ones that actually became successful and helped you push on and improve.
I think being bold is something that definitely stands out to me from your career at the moment. I don't want to say career as a whole, because of course it's still ongoing, right? And I want to keep on seeing it going. But there's one thing that stands out to me from when you were younger, and it's actually quite relevant to me as well, because I've also technically had work from this person as well. But you did a casting workshop with Ender. What stands out from that?
That was great. That was like around 2020 Worlds, I believe, right? Where they had those MasterCard priceless experiences, and I got into that casting one with Ender. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed Ender. I'm sad he chose. I believe he's still doing Valorant, right?
Yes, still on VCT.
I thought he was incredible in the LEC, and not just what he brought as himself to the product, but the ideas and creativity he brought behind the scenes that was clearly there in that era of the LEC, with the content and skits, and that was phenomenal. And I think at the end of the day, it's one of many feedback sessions. Like especially now that back then, 2020, getting to get feedback from Ender was a huge thing. I believe Medic was actually also there as well for bits. There was someone else, if I'm not mistaken. It was Scoundrel was also there for some of it, and that was obviously really, really big, really, really crucial. But now, like, I've had the honor of being rugby reading with many, many incredibly talented people, and I think the different feedback is just all about taking it in, and it shapes you a bit, right? And helps you find your way. You take some in, some are more characteristics, but yeah, Ender was it was a great session. I do remember it. Yeah.
When I was talking to Jamada, we had quite a strong conversation about adding constructive criticism into your routine, even if you don't think that you necessarily need to do it. So like trying to add feedback, and if you think the feedback isn't relevant, then doing it first. And if it's still not relevant, then at least you tried it, right? So I think that's something that I appreciate a lot from your career as a whole, is like you can see the behind the scenes work sometimes, and it's like, okay, well, clearly he knows what he's doing around feedback, right?
Yeah, I think I've been always very good at taking feedback. I maybe it's because of the messages I got when I was 15 and started casting with voice cracks and all the negative comments, but I really just didn't care if it helped me improve. And obviously many of those comments did not. I was going to spend my time on it. If not, they could call me whatever they want. I couldn't care. And I think when I started working with Gulbo, I remember him asking me like, how do you want the feedback? And I was like, look, you can tell me that what I'm doing here, what I'm saying is giga shit. If you then tell me what we need to do to move it in the correct position, the correct way, I'm totally fine with that. And he was very happy with that because that's how he liked to give feedback. And it worked really well. That's how I've been doing feedback with Asha as well. He's also very happy to be blunt, and I wanted to be blunt. I don't want it to be like, oh, some of this is good. No, if this part of what I'm doing is really bad, tell me, and you can give me some feedback. Obviously, now as I've grown and I've gotten older, I've got more experience. I'm more. I don't want to say selective because I'm still very open, but it's more about trying things off. Where back with Gulbo in particular, it was very much about establishing the foundations, right? Like the foundations are here now. Now it's more stylistic differences that are often the issue. And that is a more open conversation you then have with the colleagues, right? Like Middlecut about, I think what I'm saying is very good. You might view it differently, but that's maybe where I would just differ stylistically. Like there is nothing wrong with what you're saying. I would have put pressure on these words in terms of the cadence. Like it's very small, minute, micro things, right? But in the beginning, it was these wide changes in completely how I saw the game and what I spent my time looking with my eyeballs at on the screen, because maybe I was looking at the wrong thing and I was just objectively missing important things. And obviously that's more clear in the feedback. And I wanted to be told, you're looking in the wrong place, mate. You need to look more at the minimap. And those are easier to adjust. But I love getting feedback, man. I think if someone comes in with a good intention of helping me improve, I'm open for it all. I really am, and I love it. I think it's important to get out of your own little knowledge bubble as well. I mean, I'm someone who's very much into politics and quite a lot in the US as well, and I have a few channels who are very much Republican oriented. Even though I'm from Denmark, I'm a Democrat. I don't agree with them fully, and it's not about to be a politics talk. But I think the point I'm saying is, I watch some of those videos where the political analysts there, I think they're completely in the wrong. But for me, I think it's fun to see. So what do they view about this case that just happened, right? Because obviously there's always something there that they spend a lot of time talking about. And my social media is in one bubble about what they view. So if I don't go out of my way myself to find the different view, what the other side views, I'm not going to understand it, because it's always going to be, through a different lens. And you can agree with them or not, or look, what you're saying here in 10 minutes is garbage. But I find it fun and intriguing to see that other view, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about social media, stuff like bubbles, and you have your side and maybe they have their side. Esports as a whole is quite big on social media, but I remember in your interview with Dom Sacco, it wasn't always casting, right? Your time at Tricked.
Yeah.
Social media.
I wanted to expand. What I was doing, right? I don't even remember how I got into it. I think I just saw the application. I was like, you know what, that seems kind of fun. And for me, that was a way to get one step closer to the NLC again, right? That was still the aim. 2021. I got the job very easily, surprisingly enough, and didn't make much for it. I got very little. But it was fun. I was with the team on boot camps. I learned a lot of our do's and don'ts on social media. We definitely got me and my coworker. We definitely got a lot of praise for some of the good stuff we did. A lot of very harsh words about some of the tweets we made, because that didn't align exactly with what Trick wanted to do. They were very against content, you could say, or creative output, because they wanted to appear professional. And we did not have the budget to make every video look like it was a 5,000 euro YouTube video. But we had fun. It was really, really nice. The team behind the scenes, like at the league department, incredible. Like Vendetto, Den Voxney, and every single one, every other one involved in it. I had a great time. And obviously, winning the NLC was an incredible experience, because I got to follow the team along the way from behind the scenes. And wow, yeah, I remember watching that. I remember that split so vividly, like watching the games, watching the reverse sweep against Fnatic. I was in that Discord call, and it was really, really special. It was a special split, even if I maybe didn't feel like I was given the creative freedom me and my coworker wanted, because of higher ups outside of anyone from the league department's control.
Do you think that acted as like a little bit of a stepping stone for you into the NLC?
You could say so. I thought for me, it was a way to get closer. If that was the ultimate reason, I don't think so. I think I was getting an EME EU Masters before I even touched an NLC product. Or not actually. I did have my NLC Div 2 debut just before I got an EU Masters. But for me, it was about just any way I could get closer to the NLC, I was going to do because I wanted and I needed to be on the NLC. And yeah, if it helped, who knows? Maybe the guy in charge of talent can tell you that if you ask him. I'm not sure. I hope so, but I had fun regardless. Like even if it didn't, it was an incredible time.
So you've talked a lot so far about traveling, right? Going to that Rust tournament. I mean, being in Trick, and then even like just generalized going to lands, right? But I want to talk about Berlin, right?
Yeah.
When you were studying, especially, what was that period of your life like?
It was stressful, right? I'm lucky it was over my summer vacation, but I remember that period very vividly because I felt like that shaped a lot of my modern views of where I'm currently still moving in life. It was that period that ended up with me deciding that I wanted to go to uni. For a long period of time, I actually considered, I don't want to say throwing my life in the drain, but throwing it all at the kitchen sink to see if I could get on the LEC and essentially move to Berlin to make myself as available as possible. And flying to and from Berlin each week was stressful. It was rough on my body. It was very much you spend a lot of hours in the airport, and I wasn't always flying direct. A 1 hour flight was nice. Most times I was flying through different connections because it was very last minute. That meant I had long layovers, long days. One day I woke up at 3 a.m. to make it into the studio on the same day, and I was informed the day before if I wanted to be on the show. So that was really taxing mentally. That summer was very much fly to Berlin, come to do the show and grind that out, come back, play Football Manager for like 3-4 days, just recharging because you're drained. Go to Berlin again next week, and rinse and repeat. And I loved it. It was great. It was fun. It was rough. It was tough. But at the same time, I think it also made me realize that I love casting and I want to do it as much as possible. But at the same time, I really love the daily life I have in Denmark, going to, at that time, gymnasium. I love the social life of going to a gymnasium. I wanted to have that social life at uni as well. I wanted to study further, and maybe you could say I made the risk calculation in my head that I wasn't willing to throw my life at the sink to see if it would stick and I could get on the LEC, because if I could just get to work on the NLC, or not just because the NLC is not just the NLC is my home, it's the region I'm shaped by. There is no place I'd rather be than talking the NLC, and I'm able to do that while going to uni, which I think that summer very much in my head decided that I didn't want to lose my daily life in Copenhagen and the social life and everything I have here for a slight chance of making it to the LEC. If the LEC really wanted me, I'll gladly do it. I would love to do it, but I would not be moving my whole life down to Berlin without any guarantees of having the job for more than a few gigs, right? Which is what has happened to many, where their life is very much in jeopardy, and I couldn't put my life in jeopardy by moving my whole life to Berlin. I wouldn't put that on myself.
Would you say the flights back and forward that you talked about was potentially the first time you started to feel burnout in a way from casting?
I really don't. I think burnout is a strong word, because I didn't feel burnout on the casting. It was maybe just I put so much energy into it, and it was the uncertainty around it, right? One thing was the uncertainty around what happens in the off season. That's obviously a mentally very taxing time for casters because their livelihoods are up in the air. I thought it just for me gave more clarity, because I was very much balancing between the two decisions of after gymnasium, which I was finishing a year after. What do I want to try and move to Berlin and risk it all, or do I want to have a gap year in Denmark, try from there, and then if not, go to uni, keep with the social life you have, and that's the route I decided to go. And I think that's not just on the flights, but also on what I thought of Berlin as a city, maybe, because I think it made me appreciate how happy I was how happy I was and how happy I am in Denmark, right? I think my Danish patriotism isn't just a facade. I really love where I live. I love the people. I love my life here. I love my friends. I love my family. And I thought I couldn't move away from them from that for a slight chance, especially not to Berlin, because that city is great, but I wouldn't live there.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you get an opportunity like the LEC, it's a lot of risk that you have to put into like one basket, right? Of, okay, well, you're moving essentially everything that you've made in Denmark over towards Berlin to just go for one opportunity. But a lot of casters I've talked to beforehand have all said kind of one thing, and it's sometimes casting becomes a feeling of more like a job rather than a passion. So my my question to you would be, how do you reignite the passion for the game for you personally?
I think that's a tough one, because obviously League of Legends comes and goes. I had a period in my life where I didn't play League at all for a few years. Around when Fnatic didn't make Worlds 2016, I actually kind of stopped watching. I stopped playing. I didn't install it on my new PC when I bought it. And then somehow it just crept its way back into my life. 2017, I do remember losing to Misfits in the semifinals of 2017 summer, 3-1, horrible. But the miracle run at Worlds, I remember that was really what got me into, like, really into League again, not just casually playing it. We put it like we had a big, I don't want to say assembly, but we had like a project week at school. And me and my friend was like in a different room. We were setting up for what we were going to do. And we had a projector. And we projected the games that Fnatic were playing up on the stream. And I remember that day so vividly, like, all day at school. I was like, holy shit, are they doing it? And that, you could say, reignited my passion for League. I don't always play League every single day right now, but I watch League about every single day. And you could say that sometimes gets boring, but I don't know. I mean, reigniting my passion for the game, playing it, take a step back. You don't have to play it every single day. It can be unhealthy. Don't play 20 ranked games a day. I would hate myself if I did that. But if it comes to watching it, maybe it's also just take a break. For me, it's my job, so I can't really take a break. But I don't feel the burnout either. I think maybe it's about balance in your life, because it's not the only thing I do. I have uni, I have friends, I have family I want to see as well. I like watching football too, so that it's not, my whole life isn't just watching 10 hours of League a day, because I don't think I could do that. But I watch hours of League a day. But I guess it's because I have a good balance, that League doesn't feel like the only thing I'm ever thinking and talking about, which is leading to the fact that I haven't felt burnout on watching League since 2017.
Yeah, I like to say League is a little bit like the Green Goblin mask, where it's in the back, it's calling you a coward, and it's asking you to come back to it every time. I remember so many times when I was younger, because I started playing League in 2017.
Ooh, so you're actually kind of new to it, or not new
Yeah.
anymore, but I guess you're younger than me, right? So how young were you?
I was 12, 13 when I started playing
Okay.
League. So that was around the time when it was like season what? I don't really remember, like season 8, something like that.
Yeah, if it says 2017, it would have been season 7.
Season 7, yeah.
That was a good season. Season 6 was fun as well.
I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember some of those periods very vividly of my childhood, right? I played since I was 9. Like, I can't remember a time in my life really at this point where League wasn't a part of it. And I think that's why I feel so lucky I get to support myself talking about something that I've been happy about and infuriated about ever since that.
Yeah, no, I remember most definitely when you talked about stuff like Fnatic, when they had that Wells playthrough. I was in my room watching it on my little laptop, absolutely confused about what was going on, but I knew the players. That was about it. But that was the roster with Reckless, Bwipo, Neme, right?
Nah,
If I'm
if you're
correct.
if we're talking 2017, we're talking Soas, we're talking
Yeah,
Broxer,
Hilly.
we're talking. No, actually, this is the one you won't know. He's very unknown. No one knows this guy's played for Fnatic, but I was a big fan of him. But it was Caps in the mid lane, of course. Reckless is AD carry, but it was Jesses on support. Another Dane. There was
Oh,
3 Danes in that roster. Jesses then didn't do much after that in his career. He coached Misfits for a period. He was actually on the Misfits coaching staff with the Caps, he kills on summer. He was on that coaching staff. He's the guy with the notebook right after the play who says like, oh,
ah,
he knows they lost it because he's played with Caps. He knows they were cooked at that point. But yeah, he was really nice. Just I met him actually at the finals in spring 2018. Kind of to sign my Fnatic flag, even if he didn't play for the Org back then. But he was still a streamer, I believe, in early 2018 for them.
yeah, honestly. But fast forward to 2022. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a very special year for you, right?
Yeah, it was. I think about the age as well, right? 18 is when you turn into an adult. I think a lot was happening at that time. I was going in, having the first real year of gymnasium without COVID, which has
Mm,
obviously impacted a lot of my like the a few years of my life. Boarding school, the first year of gymnasium, like really years that shape you as a teenager were very different because of that. So it was a big year for me. I obviously, as I said, missed out on EU Masters 2021 summer, which I shouldn't have been sad about, but I ended up being sad about that because we got a message on Twitter being told we were 4 people in the running, 2 places available, and a few days later, that had the expectation bubbling, and not making it was really rough. We had a school party at that day, and let me say, I don't remember much of that party because I had to drink away the tears. And I came home to I remember my dad opened the door when I got home, like at middle of the night, and I was like, I was devastated. I was, I thought, I don't want to say for a second, I thought I had lost the chance, but getting to work at EU Masters would have been, was a dream. And I think after that as well, I wanted to make sure I got that chance, and I wanted to do it while I was 18. I wanted to know that I was the youngest to ever do it because I know I could. I know I was so close, and I went into 2022 grinding my fucking ass off. I knew I wanted that opportunity. I knew this was when I needed to break into the NLC as well, because the NLC, I couldn't do anything else. There was no Danish league that had been taken away. There was nowhere else for me to go, and there was no place else I wanted to be. And then the NLC and EU Masters, like those were the 2 goals for the year. And then I grinded, and then I got a guest appearance with Rudude on the second division. And then obviously, as I told about, I had the point of contact at Riot that got me in the loop for EU Masters. Got that, and then I started guesting on the NLC as well, that was really the crazy one, right? Flying to Berlin, working with Trouble, Arsha. I don't think I actually got to work with Jamar down there, but he was obviously on the product. By Perun, Hip Brain as well, like all these incredible people who really helped shape a lot of that year for me. I think in particular I want to mention Trouble, who also spent time outside of EU Masters helping me a lot. And yeah, that year gave me belief that I could make it. And luckily for me, I got a spot in the NLC in 2023. Obviously, a very different NLC 2023 with everything that's gone on. Losing accreditation meant that it was not the NLC I had got to know in 2022, and I was very much looking forward to join. It became something different, and it took a lot of healing and rebuilding to get anywhere, or not to get anywhere near, to surpass what 2022 NLC was, which I think we only managed to do this year with the incredible LAN finals and the incredibly talented team I've been lucky to work with.
I want to segue. So the night before your first broadcast, EU Masters. I know you're quite a bold person, especially with confidence going into stuff like this, but what was that like? Were you a bit nervous, or were you just feeling like, I've prepared, I've been doing this since I was young, I'm ready for this, I'm gonna smash it?
Yeah, I was horrified. I mean, I think I've never been someone who's felt imposter syndrome much. I could say the reflective person of I'm proud how far I've came, but I know how hard I've worked to be here. That's kind of the feeling I've had at these two great events we've had with the NLC, where I've been lucky enough to go in Copenhagen and Stockholm. Like I didn't feel out of place working on the team. Even though, I am still sometimes starstruck when I look around at the talent I'm surrounded by and how lucky I am to get to work with them, because goddamn, they're incredible. But I also feel like I deserve to be there with the hard work I've put in throughout all these years and the level I know I can produce. But EU Masters was different because I was, 18. I hadn't casted an ERL Div 1 at that time. I'd guessed it once on an ERL Div 2. I shouldn't be there if you look at my accomplishments, but I was. And as the youngest ever, and that's the first time as well, I casted with Nymera, I casted with Trouble, like these two people who, have gone on to do really good things. It was really, really big. It was shocking. And I hoped I could get to cast with Guldborg in my first EME Masters debut for that confidence and, knowing each other. But our schedules didn't mix well for that first spring. So we didn't actually get to cast together until summer. So I remember being nervous. I mostly remember just before we went live, I was with Nymera that day. How much I was shitting myself, man. Not physically, but I was so nervous. Like it was really, really daring. And I remember as if I'm almost like shaking as, production's counting down. Luckily, I think it was good. It was at home. I was in my home room. I was in the familiar setting, my own bedroom, right? In my dad's basement, the place I was casting for ages. So that felt a bit homely. Nymera was really good to me. He was very good to work with. And the thing that horrified me most was actually the first game. I can't remember who they played against, but Unicorns of Love were playing, and there was no kill for 18 minutes. As a play-by-play, that's what can help you, right? When you're nervous, when you don't know what to talk about, that's what helps you. Just following the game's action, and there was no action. But luckily, I had prepped on every single team to the bone, so I had enough to fall back on, and I did my due diligence, and it ended up going pretty all right. Even if I look back on it today with where I am now, of course, I don't think I did the best. But at that time, that was definitely some of the best I've produced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I don't blame you for being nervous. That seems absolutely terrifying. But I understand you're a man of preparation, right? You love your presentations. You love being well known. So how was that aspect when you stepped off the desk for the first time? Like realistically, you went on before, you were really nervous. How was it when you got off?
It's good. I think for me, I've really learned that for me to be confident, I need to know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like if I really know what I'm talking about, nothing can stop me. If I know my stuff, and obviously, for example, when we talk in-game stuff, I'm lucky I work with people way more knowledgeable than me, and I love having open dialogue with them about it, even if I view things differently, despite maybe my lesser skill than let's say Aragon, right, who's somehow pretty good at League of Legends. But the players though, the stories, I need to know them in and out for me to feel confident. If I don't, like, for example, with EU Masters, if I didn't show up confident in my prep, it would have gone awry. And it would have definitely gone awry after 18 minutes with no kills. But because I knew the players, I'd gone through every single player's story to the best of my ability, I felt confident. I had enough to fall back on. And I used this as well for, is it oral exams? You call it in the UK, right? When you go into an exam and it's oral, it's not written. I do that too because I read up and I make sure I know my shit. And when I know my stuff, you can't stop me. I know what I'm talking about. I know my players in the NLC. I know their stories. I know where they've been. I know the orgs. I know where they've came from. And if we then have an hour-long break, I'm not gonna be thrown out of it because I know my shit. And that's what makes me confident, because if everything falls around, goes awry behind us or around us in the arena, it's okay because I know my stuff. I know my teams. I know my players. I know the two, for the finals, Aragon and Aisha I've got around me are incredible and we'll make it through. Go back to Copenhagen. That first game, I'm all of a sudden hosting the desk with no Asher on there because of the technical difficulties. I'm not flinching. I know my players. I know my teams. and I need to get on with it, and I need to lock in. And I guess that, and you can say that's a cringe thing to say to yourself, but I know my stuff, and that gives me the confidence to speak and proudly present it with confidence in the voice as well.
I mean, I think that's quite a fair point to say, even if it's like, I've got a lock and I've got this confidence. I think it's very much shown. I mean, especially when we had that really long tech pause at NLC up in Stockholm, you did not flinch at the slightest. And I was saying to many people, I feel so bad because they're having to go on for so long. But at the same time, it was so impressive.
Yeah, it's rough. I think Copenhagen was the toughest one, right? Because without Arsha as well, someone had to start hosting. I took that duty on me. Luckily, I think for Copenhagen as well, my first time in a big arena where people came to see the show we are putting on. I felt really confident, which shocked me a bit. I was nervous. I was really nervous, but I was also really confident. Obviously, I think confidence is found in the foundation you create for yourself, and that's with the prep for me in terms of casting. But also the fact that I knew, like, I felt so confident in with my home crowd, you could say. I'm Danish. They're not all of them are Danish, but many of them are Danish. I was 10 minutes away from, a pretty local area to where parts of my family live and stuff like that. Like, I walked to the arena on the show days, and I felt, really confident in where I was, and I felt like people wanted us to succeed despite everything that was going wrong, and that gave you gave me the power to go on and not flinch despite internally the monologue and all the bad thoughts start spinning. I've got it. I believe in myself.
Yeah, sod them. Like, you just keep on pushing, keep on going forward, be a little linear. Now, I want to talk about something a little non-linear. I want to throw a wild card in there per se. So you've done some pretty unique casts, right? Someone would say that. I want to talk about triple casts. Now, that is a spanner in the work, especially with something like 2 play-by-plays.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that a few times in my career. I casted an NLC final as a color caster. Was that back in 2023, maybe even? And then even further back in League Championship Denmark, we had a LAN finals where we were 2 play-by-plays as well. And I remember we were talking about, we weren't sure who's going to play-by-play. And like 15 seconds before we go live, I asked the co-caster, hey, who's going to do play-by-play? And what about the opening? And I think with 5 seconds to go, he just tells me, you do the opening, I do the play-by-play. At that point, there is no arguing because the show is starting. And I do the opening, and then I have to adapt on the fly to the fact that I'm going to color cast. And that's the first time I ever color casted at that LAN finals, which was very unique and very weird. Who knows? I think I'd do better as a color caster now with my experience in the desk and the help I've gotten from that. But back then, it was a very, very uncomfortable experience. But we made the best of it.
Talking about comfortability, was there ever like a quote unquote moment with you when you kind of realized, yes, I am a play-by-play, but this is my style. Like, this is what I do that's kind of unique compared to other people?
I think finding your unique self is a bit hard, to be honest, as a broadcast personality. I struggled with that a lot for a few years. Not about in terms of my casting style. I knew what I wanted to do. I liked having some of the big, epic, slower paced, big team fight calls. But throughout my entire childhood and my entire teenagehood, I've been told I speak way too fast. My teachers have said it. I've been told that at every parents who come to school meeting, where the parents are as well. We were told that every year when I went to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way up throughout the school, right? And I can speak fast, and I've learned to do it clearly as well, and I can do some sick stuff there as well. But that's one thing. The other is how I present myself on broadcast, and that took a while. And especially how I defined my style, because at first I was the young one, and I remember Goodwood told me you can't be that forever, and I think that made me throughout the years realize what I really meant by the young one, because I'm very naturally optimistic about my teams, my players, my nation. sometimes it's rough when you support your football team and they're horrible, and you're optimistic every single week you'll get 3 points, and it's the hope that kills you, and that kills me every week when I see Leicester throw away a result or whatever. But I think, and I know this is just something I've learned about myself as a person. If I don't believe, then why am I even here? And I think to me that also leads into sometimes on the teams I've been told I use too big words for them, or I overhype them a bit. And I do that unintentionally because I really when I look in and prep for teams, I start believing in them. I start seeing the potential. Maybe they have a player I've casted 3 years ago in the Danish scene. I'm like, I remember this guy as being pretty good. I'm excited for this, and I can see how this could work. And I think that's now shaped me more to obviously being very optimistic about my country, Denmark, and repping the flag as the only Danish caster in the NLC. But also for the teams, I genuinely want every single team to succeed, because I've spent time prepping for them, and we could say kind of falling in love with them, right? Because I know the story now, I know the players, and I want to see them succeed. I want to see their hard work pay off, and that leads to me on broadcast being, you could say, I think Asha said I'm biased to everyone, and I kind of like that because I am a bit biased to everyone. I want to see everyone succeed. I want to see all the teams really do well, even if someone will have to come last. I'm hoping all of the team manage to push to the best of their ability, and I think having that come through in my desking style in particular, I'm very happy with, because I know the team really well. I want them to succeed, and I want to give the small team a voice as well. That's a completely different topic that I was about to open, but you get what I'm saying in terms of style.
I feel like that's quite a unique style to have, because when a lot of people come into casting, and there's a lot of quote unquote aggravated hate around being biased. It's like, oh, you're casting this team more hype, and you're casting this team more hype. But I feel like if you're casting everything hype, then maybe none of it becomes hype. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, that's a very slippery slope. And it's something I'm very aware of as well, especially in terms of the words I use. I can, I've been better, and I think Trouble pointed that out. I said that in the interview with Dom Sacco as well. That if I really just, I can't give them all these big titles and big belief behind them. But I think to me, I'm cutting back to more, I'm very good at how can they succeed to the best of their ability. And it's also about, for me, defining to the viewer what is success for an organization that maybe isn't expected to win it, but what would be a big success story for them is finishing top 4. You can see Lightside, right? Like rebuilding the roster 4 times, and then they finish the best they ever have in the NLC in the toughest year of the NLC. That's a massive success story for them. And I think it's important that gets the correct spotlight on the broadcast as well, that even if they might not walk away with the medals in Stockholm, they have something they can be proud of, because I know they will be tuning into the stream being very proud of what their team has done. And if that just goes under the radar because we completely misjudged them, then we are failing as a product and as casters. And yeah, I've become bitter in how I show my bias, because if everything is hype, nothing is hype. But I think it helps me more so paint the picture perfectly, even off the small guy and not just the big teams.
Bit of a underdog caster in casting style.
You could say.
Yeah, I feel like that applies for Leicester as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just attracted to the underdog story, right? I think that kind of goes back to my own story, right? I maybe wasn't supposed to be doing the things I was at my age, and there was some people believing it wasn't going to happen, and there was some people, there were some things I couldn't do before I turned 18. I couldn't work with Red Bull, for example, even if I know Gulpo wanted me to work there with him, because I wasn't old enough. That's understandable. They're an energy drink company. But I think I maybe wasn't supposed to do what I was at my age, and I felt like a bit of an underdog many times. And maybe that's what makes me so excited to see if the underdog can turn some heads.
I feel like there's a lot of an underdog situation that you like to portray when you're casting, but I want to talk about an underdog situation for you, right? You were in that position originally. So kind of, how does it feel looking at where you are now compared to the photo we looked at originally?
It feels good. I think this is a photo you posted as well. I posted, which I rarely do. I very rarely post. I'm very bad at my social media, but I don't really care about it too much. I just want to talk about the teams I love and the league I love. I think it's a very proud moment to see how far I've come, where I am now. I've achieved things I never dared to dream of achieving. I like when I was younger, and you can say maybe I'm a bit I don't want to say jealous, but envious, right? Like I really, maybe that's also a very negatively loaded word, but like, you know, when I was younger and I saw doing things that I really wanted to do, like I want to do that. And I used it not to like try and pile them down, but to inspire myself. Like I want to reach that. I want to cast the NLC. I want to cast EU Masters. Like these are goals I wanted to reach. And I remember myself at age 15 looking up, like if I could get to do this, I'd love it. And I've done that now. I've been in a big arena in Denmark. I've had my mum, who used to drive me to all these things, who once drove me 5 hours from across the country to get me to the airport so I could fly to Amsterdam on time. I've got to give her that experience of going in and really showing what I do now in that big arena with 1,800 people there physically. I've got to stand in Hobart arena in which Regulus got a pentakill, a final I remember watching with my dad when I was young, that legendary final against Origin. To stand there myself and work, it's something I could only dream of as a kid, and I'm so proud for what I've done, and I've really just enjoyed every step along the way, because it's really about the journey, not the destination, right?
About the journey and every step along the way, I mean, that's most definitely something I think a lot of people want to be able to do when they have that initial success, like bring their family who was there supporting them at the start, be like, yeah, this is what I'm doing now. And I feel like that's kind of like a heartwarming scenario for people. But you talk a lot about the success of an organization in your desk work and in your casting. Is like, is this a good journey for them? But I want to talk about the journey for you. Where do you see this kind of going for yourself? Like, what's the next chapter in Duckling's story that he wants to write?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. Because my career and what I wanted to do with it has changed a bit over the past few years. I want to remain on the NLC. I want to keep doing the best I can for the NLC. I want to put out the best product the NLC can. I want to know the teams in the NLC better than anyone. And I want to keep going to university at the same time. If bigger opportunities come, like doing EU Masters again, I will be there. If I'm asked to go down to LEC to guest, I will be there. But for me, I'm not expecting to move across Europe to work at a league. I want to work on the NLC. The NLC is my home. It's the region I've grown up. I've grown up alongside, you could say, because with all the national leagues before and all the changes we've had, I've seen that all from the inside as a caster in the small little Danish part of it. And I want to be in the NLC for as long as I can. That's my motivation to keep improving, is to make the NLC better than it ever has been, alongside everyone else, obviously working on the product. And you'll see me in NLC hopefully next year, and hopefully the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. And then everything else is a bonus, because I just want to be the best I can for that league, and for my home. And then I'll keep grinding at uni as well, which is obviously taking a lot of time with studying business economics, and I'll be doing that for 4 more years. So yeah, and then after that, probably adulthood awaits, but that'll come eventually, right?
He's a smart one. Economics, I can do that, man.
It's rough sometimes.
Yeah, I'm just a humble League of Legends player. I'm not too smart, but I have a couple of questions lastly to, kind of round this out for you. And they're questions that I typically ask to everyone that comes on here. And my number one to get started would be, when you look back on everything, when we're being a bit reflective like we were earlier, is there anyone in your journey, maybe like your mum driving you to the airport for 5 hours, or your dad being there with you to give you that support when people aren't being that nice in the chat, who don't usually get mentioned too much, but who have played like quite a big role in helping you get to where you currently are?
Like the thing is, right, when you start mentioning people, there's always going to be many who won't be mentioned. I think there are too many to go through them all. I think obviously the obvious ones I gladly proclaim are my parents and a very supportive family. I've mentioned at length about Gulbo. I think that's the obvious one. If you look at my career as well, where it really went from being I love doing this to I love doing this and I'm actually quite good at it. That was with him. Like I don't want to say I owe so much to him, but I'm so thankful for everything he did for me and how much of his own time he spent. I mentioned Dietlis today. He's someone who doesn't get mentioned as much. He's the one who got me the contact in the Danish league. The guy I first worked abroad with as well, who helped me, get that Ross gig, and I grew a lot from that. If I am to give someone who maybe doesn't get as much praise as they deserve for how much they've helped me throughout my career path, maybe I want to say Middlecott. I've worked alongside him for many years, and always someone who's by my side. I mean, I've casted for longer than him, despite him being older than me. I remember him coming up, but we had some years of working together very well, and he's probably the one I've worked with the most over the course of these years. And his insight is always really, really, really valuable. And we've worked well together. I think there was a moment where we took ourselves and pinched ourselves in Copenhagen about how incredible it was to think about when we first started working together to where we are now, or where we stood now then in that arena, getting to talk about the NLC. But yeah, there are too many to count. I've given a lot of praises to many people I've worked with in this one, right? I think the team we have right now in the NLC, like Ashram this year, has been obviously a bit my boss, but also very supportive of it as well in VOD reviewing with me, basically on my demand when I ask him to, right? Like a lot of people have been really helpful. I'm lucky there are so many helpful people in the scene. I think I can say for leagues who now run NLC as well. I mean, I've worked with them since I'm 15. There are so many people in that company who have seen me grown up and supported me along the way and pushed me and given me chances in different roles so I could experience that. I've done social media for them for a short period to try and figure that out as well. So like there are too many to really go into full detail about every single one I'm thankful for the help with, but there was a few extra ones maybe who don't get shouted out as much.
Very long list. No, Middlecott, most definitely. Meeting him at Hova was great. I mean, I didn't even know he casted before, but that is definitely something that I have learned. But I think to end it, lastly, it's the one question. I have a feeling I know the answer to this one, but if your whole career was, put into a documentary in a way, what would be one moment or one scene that would kind of absolutely have to be in there?
That's a really hard one, because I feel like there are many moments, but I'm gonna take you back to one you definitely weren't expecting, because I'm gonna go right back to the first moment, and the first moment of me daring to do something risky, and that was casting over a clip of Cloud9 winning the major in Danish and sending it to the local school where they was going to be hosting the LAN tournament, Netherland, where I got my first gig, sending that into them, asking if I could cast the tournament. And I remember the day I got a message back saying, of course, I get to cast Counter-Strike for them because they thought they thought it was really nice. And I remember that day very vividly. I believe it's the day where 2018, Argentina against France at the World Cup.
Okay.
It was a family gathering. That's why I remembered so clearly, getting that text message about of course I get to cast Counter-Strike for them. They thought it was fun. That was what kickstarted it all, going out on a limb and sending that message or shooting your shot or whatever when you want to phrase it. That's what started it all. But there are many other moments, pivotal ones, like Guldborg taking me in would have been my other one, probably the most expected one. I think. That was what I was going to go with, but that was too easy. I didn't want to get it too easy. So we go back to the beginning. But many moments who have shaped my career and who I am now, right? Because I've been shaped by esports growing up within it.
Well, Duckling, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you for coming on today and kind of being so open about sharing your story. I think a lot of people are going to learn quite a lot from this about, being a little bit bold.
Yeah, I think just shortly on that as well, right? It sounds so cringe, so many of those, Tottenham has to dare to dream, Leicester has the foxes never quit. I've always told myself, and my dad has told me, hard work pays off. And I think how cliche they might be, they are to some degree also true, right? So maybe stick by them.
Hey, my mum says you get out what you put in, so you gotta.
That's also a very good one, right?
got to end on that. But thank you very much for coming on. As I said, it's been absolutely incredible. Yeah, hopefully we'll hear from you again.
Hopefully, yeah.